Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, why Julius Randle's first season in Minnesota was a rousing success. And will it be his last season in Minnesota, or will he be back next year? I'll give my take on that situation and the reasoning behind it. It's all coming next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Today on the show, we're going to review Julius Randle's first season and possibly only season in a Timberwolves uniform. We'll talk about why it was overall a success and a couple areas of not concern, but areas where maybe he didn't quite perform to expectations and why I think that could impact what ultimately happens with Julius next year and moving forward in terms of, is he in Minnesota? Is he moved elsewhere? What happens with the contract option this offseason? So we'll cover all that on today's show. We'll also hit a couple of other non-Randle related Timberwolves notes at the end of the show. That's all upcoming here today. A big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves, and you can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. All right. So when the Timberwolves acquired Julius Randle back at the end of September last year, my analysis of the deal was basically the Wolves got worse. They did this because they knew they were going to have to pay the piper with Karl-Anthony Towns. And, you know, this is our best chance, if you're speaking as the Wolves, this is our best chance to recoup some of the value of Karl-Anthony Towns on the court, save ourselves on the financial side, and give ourselves some flexibility with Julius Randle's player option. Like, we could trade him at some point during this season. He could opt in next year. He'd then be an expiring. He could opt out if he doesn't have a good year, whatever. Like, it gives you flexibility beyond the Karl-Anthony Towns supermax that they were going to owe him. I think unequivocally, in a vacuum, Karl-Anthony Towns is the better player. And I thought he was still the better fit for the Timberwolves. I thought I did not like it from a basketball standpoint. And my summary of it basically last September was, look, the Randle for Cat piece of the deal hurts on both ends of the floor. I thought it would hurt them defensively as well. And I guess ultimately they weren't as good of a defensive team. I don't know that it was necessarily because of that. Certainly not only that. But I thought that, remember, this is coming off of the last time we saw Karl-Anthony Towns on the floor for Minnesota. Well, I guess the last time would have been the conference finals last year when he did not play well against Dallas. Neither did Ant. But, you know, he held his own, did great against Nikola Jokic in the second round, and really kind of dominated Kevin Durant defensively in the first round sweep last year. So at the time I said, look, Cat gives the Wolves multiple ways to play on both ends of the floor and some flexibility. And I thought Julius Randle limits that flexibility, limits your options. I thought that it would help the Timberwolves' toughness. I thought that, you know, a generally similar offensive skill set, even if he goes about it a better way, or sorry, a different way, than Karl-Anthony Towns would help. But I was concerned about spacing. I was concerned about my turn, your turn offense, which all of that was a problem early in the season. My take ultimately was Dante DiVincenzo could swing the trade depending on his performance. And he ultimately had, if you take the whole body of work, I think a bit of an underwhelming season in Minnesota. We talked about him last week during the season review series. But I was pleasantly surprised with how Julius Randle performed in a Timberwolves uniform. Yes, the first few weeks were rough, and I want to look at the season in its totality because every season has those patches, those stretches. Karl-Anthony Towns, you could go through, you could say it about every one of his seasons. And Randle was really good right before he got hurt, and then he was great after he got hurt in the final 6 weeks or so of the regular season. Overall, the body of the work, the season compared to what he did during his career in New York, he spent 5 seasons with the Knicks. Prior to that, 1 season with the Pelicans when he first kind of broke out, and then 2 seasons, really, I guess 3 seasons with the Lakers, and then his rookie year, he played 1 game. Remember, he broke his leg in his first ever career game after being the 7th overall pick in the draft that year by the Lakers. But if you take the body of work, his Knicks career, in which he made 3 All-Star teams over the course of 4 years, from 2020 to 2024 to last year, of course the counting stats were all down because the opportunity was there was just less opportunity. He was maybe a 1B to Jalen Brunson in New York, but he was a clear number 2 option to Anthony Edwards in Minnesota. So we saw the scoring volume go down. We saw the shot volume go down. In fact, Julius Randle attempted the least amount of shots per game. Like, it's a really raw way of looking at it, but just field goal attempts per game. The least number per game he's had since his last season with the Lakers in 2017-18. So you have to go back 7 seasons to find when he attempted 11 field goals per game. This year, he was just over 13.5 per game. The efficiency was pretty good, though. The overall field goal percentage was his best since his Pelican season. The 3-point percentage was tied for the second best in his career. Also, the Pelican season, his best was his second year in New York when he shot a crazy 41%. He's been nowhere. He hasn't even stiffed 35% since that. That was a clear outlier in his career. That was the year he won Most Improved Player. He made All-NBA second team that season for the Knicks in 2020, 2021. Besides that, though, this was his second, or tied for his second best overall 3-point percentage, his best field goal percentage in 6 years. All that stuff was better. Second best free throw percentage of his career. And if you look at the rate-based stats, a lot of that's really positive too. The assist rate was solid, just a titch below where it was last year at the Knicks, but still one of the top 4 assist rates of his career. The turnover rate was maybe a little higher than you'd like it to be. Actually, it was his highest since his last year at the Lakers. So a higher turnover rate than you'd like to see. And there were some silly ones. We certainly saw that in the playoffs. And of course, the usage rate was down. So none of that's really a surprise. And I want to talk a little more about the assist rate here in a minute in the context of what do the Wolves do with Julius Randle next season? Is he on the team? Is he not on the team? What would they do if he's not? I want to come back to the assist rate. The one area where we saw a bit of a dip for Julius Randle was rebounding. And this is weird, but it was the worst rebound rate of his career by far. Like, his rebound rate was only 12.1%. If you're not familiar, that's right. 12.1%. If you're not familiar with rebound rate, that's the percentage of available rebounds players on the floor that they grab. So, bigs are going to, good rebounding bigs are in the 15 to 20% range. That's a big range, but somewhere in that range. His total rebound rate this year was 12.1%. That's the worst in his career, and his previous low is 14.7%. So 2.6 percentage points worse than his previous worst rebounding year. And this was 2.5 points worse than last year in New York. Almost 3.5 points worse than 2 years ago with the Knicks. So he just did not rebound the ball. Now, his offensive rebound rate was solid, but the defensive rebound rate was really low, 16.8%. He had never been below 21% in his career. He was 16.8% on defensive rebounds this year. Now, the Timberwolves as a team certainly were volatile when it came to how they rebounded, really on both ends of the floor. They started the year not caring at all about offensive rebounding, finished really strong there. Overall defensive rebounding as a team, they were 12th on Basketball Reference. I think the cleaning the glass number is a little bit different. They were a solid rebounding team, but there were several games the Timberwolves lost basically because they couldn't defensive rebound the basketball, and Julius Randle was definitely a primary culprit when it came to that. So that's an area for me that he disappointed in this year for a team that has such volatile rebounding overall. And Gobert will have games where he's not as good as he should be on the glass. McDaniels was much better this year, but Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid are guys that have often struggled to rebound, especially when they're out on the perimeter. They don't crash appropriately. They don't use their size and athleticism and length to rebound well enough consistently. Yes, they can do it, but they don't do it consistently enough. And we finally saw Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Mike Conley get a little more involved on the glass as the year wore on. Dante DiVincenzo as well, who's a good rebounding guard. But Randle, I thought, was a primary culprit for some of those games where Minnesota struggled to rebound the basketball. So overall, you look at the numbers, and it's a pretty good season for Julius Randle. You could even argue it was a better all-around season than his final year with the Knicks. I think you could pretty easily argue that, even if the volume is down. Like, you could look at the counting stats and be like, he only averaged 19-7 when he averaged 24-9 as an all-star with the Knicks. No, it wasn't as good of a season. Well, sure, but the percentages were better. The assist rate was in line. playing a different role. And I thought defensively, you could make a case he was more impactful. I think pretty clearly more impactful, at least than the scouting report I got from how he played regularly with the Knicks. Like the Locked On Knicks guys were like, hey, pretty hit and miss defensively. I thought he was better than that. Yes, there were rough patches. Everybody has those, but I thought he was actually a positive contributor on defense. I want to talk a little about the contract situation and his place on the roster and, a little bit of lineup data and what that could tell us about what the Timberwolves could choose to do next with Julius Randle. We'll do all that here next on the show. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at DoorDash. NBA fans, you know what time it is. It is the finals, and that means big performances and even bigger rewards. DoorDash is bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for Dash Pass members during the 2025 NBA playoffs. It's called They Swish, You Score. Anytime a player drops 50 or more points in a playoff game, Dash Pass members score a free 3-piece crispy tenders combo for Wingstop the very next day. Just place an order of $20 or more. Use the code Wingstop50 at checkout, and that combo is yours. Crispy, delicious, and totally free. Offer valid noon to midnight the day after the game. Terms apply. I don't know what your go-to move is after an epic game. I'm hoping for an epic finals game 3. We did not get that in game 2. Hoping for a really good one. The day after, I'd order wings. I'd just relax, watch the highlights. Maybe it's SGA. Maybe it's Tyrese Halliburton going off in this one. Whoever it might be. Actually, by the way, I did order Wingstop this last weekend with DoorDash, and it was fantastic. So here's your play. Sign up for Dash Pass to unlock this and more exclusive deals all season long. And at this point, there's just a couple weeks left in the NBA season. When any player scores 50 plus in a playoff game, Dash Pass members can grab a free 3-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop the next day with a $20 or more order. And the code Wingstop50. That's Wingstop50. That's Dash Pass, your door to more savings, more flavor, and more ways to win. Terms apply. Okay, so Julius Randle's contract situation. Julius Randle has a player option for next season. Okay, so I don't know. After the second round of the playoffs, I think everybody was kind of like, well, why would he opt in? He could get a longer term, more security if he were to opt out and sign a new deal. Well, there's the same problem. We talked about this on yesterday's show, Monday's show, related to Naz Reid. Like, nobody has cap space. Brooklyn, that's kind of it. Teams could create some space here and there. Obviously, teams are going to have, their mid-level exceptions, but that's like half of what, basically $31 million that he's under contract for next year if he opts in. And then, of course, he's entered the playoffs with 4 out of 5 disappointing games against OKC. At this point, I believe he opts in for next year. It's always a possibility the Timberwolves try and extend him. I made the case on yesterday's show. I think Naz opts in and they try and extend Naz. He's also only owed $15 million next year. And bang for your buck, if you're looking at the player value, like in a vacuum, I think you'd still argue Julius Randle's the better player. But Julius Randle at 31 or Naz at 15, you're going to take Naz at 15. Naz is also 5 years younger than Julius Randle. So if you're extending one of those guys, who are you going to extend? It's pretty obvious that Naz is the better candidate for that. The first step, though, is this player option. So, June 29th, both Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert have player options. Of course, Rudy's is actually, according to Spot Track, he's got a player option. Gobert has to choose his. This is weird, but it says that his player option for 27-28 for Gobert is it needs to be exercised on the 29th. That's beside this point, but that surprised me when I saw that in there. Julius Randle's player option is also June 29th. And then the Naz Reid's is the 30th. So according to the Spot Track website, Julius has a June 29th option and Naz has a June 30th option. My take, sitting here right now, is that the Timberwolves are likely to extend Naz Reid and not be real serious about extending Julius Randle. Now, if Randle's willing to do it at, discount's probably not the right word, but, a reasonable number, I think the Timberwolves would entertain it. He was really good this year. He's also going to be 31, 31, I guess, like basically Thanksgiving. Late November, he turns 31. So that obviously has to factor in as well if you're Minnesota. And then the other thing is, if you dig into the lineup data a little bit, and again, I'm not arguing that Naz Reid is necessarily a better player than Julius Randle. Could he be? Does he have greater upside? Absolutely. Is he a better fit on the Timberwolves? I think that's a reasonable conversation to have. If you look at two-man lineups from last season, Timberwolves two-man lineups, and I did this at NBA.com, the best two-man lineup was Mike Conley and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, which I bet if I give you 7 guesses, you might have gotten it in 10. But if you'd given me, let's say it that way, if you'd given me 10 guesses on the Timberwolves' best two-man pairing, I don't think I would have guessed Conley and Alexander-Walker. I mean, like, that surprised me. Number 2 is Rudy Gobert and Naz Reid. Number 3, in terms of net rating for best two-man pairings in the Timberwolves, was Rudy Gobert and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Number 4 was Naz Reid and Mike Conley. Number 5 was Rudy Gobert and Mike Conley. Are you catching a pattern here? So number 1, Conley, Alexander-Walker. Number 2 had Naz Reid in it. Naz Reid and Rudy Gobert. Number 3, Rudy. Number 4, Naz. Number 5, Rudy. Number 6, Naz. Number 7, Naz. So the numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, numbers 2 through 7 on the Wolves' best two-man pairing lineups all had a big man not named Julius Randle. It was Naz Reid or Rudy Gobert. And then you go DiVincenzo, Alexander-Walker, you go Alexander-Walker, Edwards, then you get another Gobert lineup, another Naz lineup, another Naz lineup, and then you get to Gobert and Randle. So Gobert and Randle are number 13th on the Timberwolves' best two-man pairings. A plus 5.4 net rating, a good lineup, yes. And then after that, you get Randle and Conley. So 13 and 14 involve Julius Randle. But of the ones above it, 10 of the top 13 two-man pairings that the Wolves had either Naz Reid or Rudy Gobert or both and did not have Julius Randle. And that, I don't think that necessarily says as much about Julius Randle as it does about how good Rudy Gobert is defensively and how good Naz Reid is offensively. And also the synergy, like the actual fit of Randle next to either one of these guys. And again, the Randle-Gobert pairing is still positive. And we could find Randle Reid. I think that's also still a positive pairing. If I can track that down here quick. But like the point is, the Timberwolves can replicate from just a straight up statistical standpoint. Naz and Gobert were more valuable to this team than Julius Randle. Now, the X's and O's, you would have to then replicate some of what Julius Randle does that Naz Reid doesn't do. Like, for instance, facilitating. We talked a little bit about the assist rate earlier. Look at the Timberwolves roster last year. You want to sort it by assist rate. Number 1 in assist rate on the Timberwolves. Number 1 in assist rate on the Timberwolves was Mike Conley. Not a surprise. Again, I'll explain assist rate, the percentage of teammate field goals a player assisted while they were on the floor. This is a Basketball Reference. So when Mike Conley was on the floor, 24.5% of teammate made field goals, nearly 1 in 4 was assisted by Mike Conley. Really good point guards are like north of 30%. Number 2 on the roster, and I'm throwing out the guys that didn't play regularly. Like, actually, Rob Dillingham was the highest, but he only played 500 minutes, so I'm taking him out. Taking out Bones Highland, Dacian Nix, Joe Ingles, Jesse Edwards, who played in 2 games. Take all those guys out. Number 1 is Mike Conley. Number 2, Julius Randle. Ahead of Anthony Edwards, ahead of Dante DiVincenzo, ahead of Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who all ran the offense and played point guard at various times for this team. And Naz Reid is all the way down at 12.6%, ahead of only Jaden McDaniels and Rudy Gobert among regular rotation guys. You could throw in Jalen Clark. You could throw in Josh Minott. And by the way, we talked on yesterday's show, this is related to the conversation, Naz's best assist rate season by far. So Naz improved in this area. And to me, that, I don't know, I'm not sure that the Wolves are going to make this decision based on assist rate only, that they're just sitting here looking at that column on Basketball Reference. But that tells a story that if the Timberwolves move on from Julius Randle, and if they end up with an extension for Naz Reid, can they replicate some of the offensive creation for himself and for others that Julius Randle provided with Naz Reid? There's a lot of things Naz does better than Julius. Obviously, shoot the 3. He's got a better overall handle, even if the drives to the basket are a bit more of an adventure with Naz, whereas Julius, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get your head down, bull in a china shop. He's going to hit a tough fadeaway, or he's going to turn it over. Naz, any number of things could happen. But this tells me that Julius Randle is very important to the Timberwolves offense from a creation standpoint for himself and for others. He was a relatively efficient offensive player this year, and he created for other people. If you lose Julius Randle, what happens? Like, for instance, in the playoffs, like we saw this in the Lakers series and the Warriors series, how good Julius Randle was. And then when he struggled in the Thunder series, how much the Timberwolves offense bogged down. And certainly it wasn't the only problem. But when the offense bogs down, or you get to the playoffs and the game slows down and teams are keen in, just doubling Anthony Edwards, are the Wolves, would a Julius Randle-less and obviously Karl-Anthony Towns-less team be able to succeed offensively? Would Naz Reid be able to carry that level of a load, which at times he didn't really do when Randle was out? Like, there were some fits and starts because he did have some really good games, and overall the numbers that he averaged were good in the month that Randle missed. But could he carry that offense to that level? And would he, if given those opportunities, be able to create for others and have an assist rate in the neighborhood of anywhere near or the realm of what Julius Randle has been able to do? That would be my concern with moving on with Randle. Sitting here right now in early June, my bet is Randle opts in and he's on the roster on opening night next year. I don't think he gets traded before opening night. But there's always a chance there's a late offseason deal, an August, September deal like we saw last year with Towns and Randle, that the Wolves end up moving Randle because some other team's willing to sign him to an extension that the Wolves are not willing to sign him to. And the Wolves don't want to have a lame duck Julius Randle year. Now, on the other hand, it's a contract Julius Randle year in that case, so you get a very motivated Julius Randle. So I bet it's still more likely than not that both Randle and Naz are on this roster on opening night next year and through next season. I still think that's the case. I think it's more likely than not Nickeil Alexander-Walker is not, as I've stated. So I think Naz and Randle are on the team. I think Nickeil's not. I think I would say Naz is, in my mind, almost for sure on the team. And Randle, there's a chance he's traded. There's also a chance if the season goes south, he's traded at the deadline. Or the Wolves sign Naz to an extension, which I think will happen. And he's the one on an extension. Randle's playing in a contract year with a lot of teams with cap space next summer in 2026. And next year would be Randle's second and final year in Minnesota. Naz would be locked up, would spend one more year as a sixth man and become the starter in the 26-27 season, with Randle leaving in free agency for somewhere else. If I were betting on like everything down the line, that's my guess. Nickeil leaves, Naz and Randle opt in. At some point, Naz gets an extension. Randle does not. Randle leaves next summer. Naz then moves into the starting lineup in 26-27. That's my prediction. But the Randle piece, if he leaves, you need to be comfortable and confident that Naz Reid can cover the scoring load, but also the assist rate, the ability to run the offense. Again, number 2 on the team. On a team without a backup point guard, Julius Randle stepped up and had the second best assist rate on the team. And I think that's an important thing to note as we move into kind of some of these off-season decisions and conversations. All right. I want to talk about a couple of quick Wolves notes, and that's how we'll close the show here today. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors at Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it is easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on, well, several things. One of them being food delivery. I love spending money on food delivery, and now I know exactly how much I spend, and it helps me budget smarter and save more. Perhaps the best thing, though, about it is the all-in-one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps to track your spending, you can use Monarch to check your finances. Again, track your spending in one spot and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right. So putting a bow on the Randle conversation, I already gave kind of my prediction there. I do think that a motivated Randle next year could be a good thing for Minnesota. And I think that as long as he brings a little more to the table rebounding wise and shows effort defensively on top of trying to put up some stats in a contract year on the offensive side of the floor, could be a good thing. I think having year 2 of Randle, Gobert, and Naz all playing together, Randle and Ant playing together, could be a very good thing. I dug into some of the other two-man numbers and overall lineup data, and there really weren't any patterns in terms of the bigs that Randle played with. Like, was he significantly better in lineups with Gobert or with Naz, or was there any pattern with him and Ant? Not really. I think him and Ant just got better together as the year went on, and there was nothing really else to glean from that. But overall, it has to be considered a successful first year for Julius Randle in Minnesota. Obviously, the deepest he's ever gotten in the playoffs, the most playoff success he's ever had. And even though the counting stats went down a little bit, everything else suggests this was right up there with the best year of Julius Randle's career. Couple of quick notes. We talked a little bit on, I think I mentioned it yesterday on Monday's show, but Nickeil Alexander-Walker, there's some additional Orlando Magic chatter. There was some discussion. Jake Fisher of the Stein line, who used to be like, I don't know, he was at Yahoo and he was at, I think, Bleacher Report a while ago. He noted that a lot of Orlando notes, and they're interested in Nickeil Alexander-Walker as a playmaking guard. And in order to sign him, they would need to make some moves and decline some options to get the non-taxpayer mid-level, which is $14 million. And that's what they could use for Nickeil. I said the other day, like, I mean, he's going to get between 3 and 4 times what he's getting, the $4.5 million or so he got in Minnesota last year. And the non-taxpayer is over $14 million. So there you go. Seems like a lot for Nickeil, but as we just talked about, the Timberwolves, like, three of their best 4 two-man lineups or whatever were Nickeil lineups. He brings a lot to the table. And so Orlando apparently has very real interest. And I mentioned this briefly yesterday, but like the way Orlando defends, Nickeil fits that, and they need shooting. Nickeil fits that. He's one of the best corner 3-point shooters in the NBA. So I think that's a great fit and great for Nickeil if he can get that money, that level of a contract. So it'll be something to keep an eye on for sure. There was also a note about the New York Knicks, of course, because there's always a New York Knicks note about their interest in some like head coaches that are already with other teams. The big headline is they want to talk to Jason Kidd, of course, currently the Dallas Mavericks head coach, who they probably figure maybe he's disgruntled after the way the Luka thing went down and everything with Nico Harrison. We don't know yet if they're going to actually get permission to interview him. And then in this report from Ian Begley of SNY there on the East Coast, he also reports that Chris Finch is part of a small group of head coaches under contract who the Knicks may want to speak with. And I don't know. It just feels weird. Like, why would Minnesota allow that? It just, I think it's kind of a non-starter. It's interesting that that's out there. Who knows who's most motivated to put that out there? If it's Finch's agent wants to put, I have no idea. I'm just spitballing. But like Chris Finch isn't going to leave. Like the Wolves aren't going to let Chris Finch go. I don't think Chris Finch necessarily wants to leave to go coach the Knicks. It's an odd thing, but I guess good. The teams are interested. The whole Tibbs thing, it sure sounds like a very similar situation to the other times Tibbs has been fired, is players got tired of being tired, basically. My thoughts are it's tough. I thought it was tough when the Nuggets fired Malone, but you figure if the player stuff is all real, if the players are that unhappy, it's hard to argue with it. Now with the Nuggets, like they were already, I mean, I guess they still ended up with a, comfortable playoff seeding, I guess. What were they? 4th, I think, in the West. So, it's not like they went to the conference finals right before they fired Malone, but like they'd won the title less than 2 years prior. So that was weird. But with the Tibbs thing, I guess I get it. It's just tough for me. But again, if we're not in the locker room, we're not in that front office, we don't know exactly how all that stuff is going down. And there must be some real impetus for it. The last thing is just an interesting note. This was a couple days ago. There was some reporting on the Jamaican men's basketball team, and that Josh Minott has committed to represent Jamaica in the FIBA World Cup. Or I guess the pre-qualifiers are this summer for the FIBA World Cup next year. 2027 FIBA World Cup. So pre-qualifiers are this summer. There's a whole list of guys like Scotty Barnes, the headliner, Isaiah Stewart from the Pistons, Devin Vassell, like there's Norman Powell, I believe, as well. Ahmed Thompson is an exciting one. I don't think he's confirmed yet, but there's a lot of guys that could play for Jamaica that are really good. Josh Minott, I don't know what kind of playing time he'll see, maybe more, now than he would in the actual like FIBA or eventually the Olympics potentially, but pretty interesting stuff that Josh Minott could make that team. We talked about Minott early last week in our player review series, and I'm fascinated to see if he gets another chance this year, assuming the Timberwolves pick up his option and keep him around. All right. That's all I got for you today here on the show. We will continue the season review series tomorrow on Wednesday show, I guess. And that will be, we'll do Rudy Gobert. We'll talk about Rudy Gobert's season on Wednesday show. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And a reminder that your second listen can be the Locked On NBA Big Board Show. It is draft season after all. We'll talk more about the draft here as soon as this series is over. NBA draft expert Rafael Barlow reacts to every workout, interview, and rumor leading up to the NBA draft. Find Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.